Thank you so much for everything.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. Hopefully, you can all hear me. And thank you all for joining us. Today, we have a very special session. This formally kicks off the interview preparation and the final phase is the home run for your ERAS application. And I am very privileged to be joined by Dr. Adam Atut, who is the Transitional Year Program Director at Hackensack Palisades. Dr. Weissman, who is the Director of Clinical Research at the same place, and our new guest, Dr. Michael Zucker, who's a transitional year resident at the same program going into radiology. So a lot of questions you have, and we'll quickly see if Dr. Toot or Dr. Weissman have some opening comments, and then we'll just dive into the questions. Housekeeping wise, you can ask questions in the chat. We'll take it later. We already collected some questions. But let me hand it over to Dr. Atut and Dr. Weissman for some opening comments. So Dr. Atut.
Okay. Welcome everyone. I see quite a bit of participants on here. Many of whom I've interacted with at some point along their journey. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Dr. Weissman. I'm one of the teaching attendings here in New Jersey. I'm part of the core faculty for the medicine training program. I also direct the research department, and we've had a lot of success and a lot of good memories and with many of you over the past year or so. And I just wanted to introduce myself, and we'll be talking more going forward.
Thank you, Dr.
Very nice to meet all of you. We're honored to be here to help you guys. Interview season's obviously upon us, and I know you guys have a lot of questions, so we'll jump right into it.
Okay, thank you. And just to get some information, I started a poll, so it looks like a lot of you are applying in this season, which is excellent. And the other question I'm asking is, how important is the interview performance? So we'll get to all of that. Thank you very much. So let me start first up with you, Dr. Atut. With about 15 days to go, what can applicants do last minute to improve their CV and their profile? Last 15 days.
Okay, so I mean, hopefully everything is done by now, right? We don't have a lot of time. So in a perfect scenario that everything is done, the most important thing, guys, is to apply on time, to try to have your ACA-GME certification done, your letters of recommendation uploaded, the ERAS application should be done, your personal statement should be pretty much finished with the exception of maybe a few touch-ups. There should be no major part of your application missing at this point. If there is, you should absolutely get on that. So if a preceptor is taking some time to upload the letter, this is the time to probably email them or shoot them a text and kindly remind them that the deadline is coming up. Remember, a lot of the faculty members in the United States, especially teaching faculty, program directors, they're very, they don't mean to ignore you. They're just very busy with like a lot of things that they manage. And they were in your shoes once. So a quick reminder, nobody will get offended by that. Just every 2-3 days, I think from now till the 28th, I would maybe just remind them to upload your letter. But beyond that, just research programs, hopefully, and get ready for interviews. That's the most important.
Yeah, Dr. Weissman, anything?
Yes, absolutely. So I would like to echo what Dr. Tu was saying. There's obviously not a lot of time. At this point, I think the focus should be on getting your application out on time. I think time is very, very, very important. So I would spend a lot of effort getting everything out in time. If there's anybody who's waiting for an outstanding letter, have that letter uploaded to your best ability. And then I would try to attract our focus toward how can I now best prepare myself to understand my CV the best and do well on the actual interview day. And that's where the focus should be transitioned to now.
Okay. Dr. Zakir, you were in their shoes, I guess, last year. So what's your opening tip?
Honestly, exactly what they said. Try to get the letters in as soon as possible. You know, I actually ran into an issue where my letter of recommendation writer didn't get the letter in on time, and the website crashes because so many people are doing it last minute. So try to get them in as soon as possible.
Okay. Dr. Tut, next question. A lot of students have it. So I have red flags. Should I address them on the ERAS CV or just leave it for the interview or personal statement?
So I've never been again, you're gonna get different answers depending on who you ask. I've always been of the thought that you should never really highlight negatives that sometimes can be missed. So I guess it would depend on what the red flag is, right? If it's, for example, a leave of absence, for example, during school, or you took a little bit longer than expected to finish a certain portion of your training, I wouldn't necessarily bring that up unless I'm asked about it, then I would explain it, right? But sometimes, you know, those small little things can get overlooked, right? Sometimes we don't notice it. So there's no reason for you to remind me that this thing occurred. But if it's a big thing, like you failed step 1 twice, right? Clearly they're going to notice that. Then you might want to explain why that happened in maybe your personal statement and what you did about it, right? That would not be a bad idea. But so it would depend on what red flag we're talking about. I would just focus the majority of your personal statement and your application on highlighting your positives. What have you done, right? What was your journey? Why do you want to come to residency in the United States? I think that's where I would focus. The positives, I would try to downgrade the negatives.
Yeah, thank you. Dr. Weissman, maybe the next question you can take. A lot of applicants have confusion on how to write about research in their CV, and then, of course, talking about it in the interview. And now you do run research courses for us. So can you explain a bit from an ERAS CV perspective how to write?
I'll get to that. I just want to echo one point back from the previous question to Dr. Tu, and I like giving this example because I think it really brings the point home well. You know, it's obviously, you know, we'll talk later in this talk about putting the focus on certain things, what you should focus on getting across to the interviewer during the interview. But I would never, ever bring up a red flag. And I'll explain to you why. Because it's, again, you want to be honest, you want to be ethical. But at the same time, let's say, for example, you're selling a car to somebody, right? And, you know, you have a nice, whatever, Toyota 2021 Camry, and the person's, you know, already taking out their wallet, going to pay you for their car. And you say to them, oh, I just want to make sure you understand the engine is not so great in this car, right? So that's probably not the thing you should say if you want to sell somebody the car, right? Unless they ask, how's the engine? Oh, well, the engine was X, Y, and Z. I wouldn't highlight things that you don't need to, that would be detrimental to you. So it's the same thing, right? You want to put your best foot forward and not throw things out there that would adversely affect you. So I think that's usually the advice I give people. Okay. So moving on to the other question, and I get a lot of my time now, the past 2 to 3 weeks, was questions around this. So let me try to clarify it for everyone. It's, let's say somebody did a poster presentation, right? And presented at a big national conference. And they want to know, how do I put this on my CV? So when you go into your publication section on ERAS, there's a drop down and you pick either poster presentation, and then you would fill in the information for that. Or if it's something to a journal, you'd click either, if it was accepted, already published in the journal, you'd hit publication section. Or if it was not published yet, then you hit research other than published. That would be the drop down. And you follow the prompts and you fill it out to the best of your ability. Now, I will say overarchingly, it does not matter exactly how you fill it out. Sometimes they want to know the day it was presented. So if you, like, sometimes a conference is 3 days and you pick one of the 3 days, that's fine. Nobody cares exactly what page number of the journal, what the URL is, what the order of the authors were when you're filling out. The most important thing is that it's showing up on your ERAS application. So when then you come into the interview, they'll see it on your application. They'll see the name of the paper. They'll see the name of the journal, and they'll ask you questions about your research. And this will give you a great opportunity to show them your engagement and interest in scholarly academic activity, interest in internal medicine, your interest in the field you're applying to, as opposed to, oh, you know, exactly how do I list it, or exactly what do I write about it? That's less important, much, much less important, because the interview is going to be that time to tell them.
Thank you. So Dr. Tut, now let's come to the big question, or one of the big questions of the day, which is ERAS format has changed. You know, now they are limiting us to 10 experiences all put together. Research, rotations, work experience, hobbies, everything is limited to 10 with a character limit. So the big question is, how are program directors going to review now, what things will be important to them, and how should applicants now re-strategize with this?
So Pawan, that's a great question, right? And so this is the first time this is happening. And so the answer is it depends on how each program director is going to, notice it. I will tell you, some program directors are very, very much about the humanistic aspect of medicine. And so they're really going to focus, for example, on your volunteer work, your, what you've done to the underserved community, right? And some other program directors are extremely academic. They're just going to focus on, okay, like what kind of US clinical experience have you had? Where did you work? In what kind of setting? With what kind of faculty? What were your roles, right? And so it really is going to depend on what kind of program you're trying to go for. If you're trying to go for top tier academic programs, I would probably suggest that, US clinical experience should probably come first, right? Where have you worked? With what faculty? And then next would probably be if you've done any residency or any sort of work back home in your country, right? And then volunteer work probably I would put at the bottom, right? But so just pick 10. I know, Poam, sometimes it's hard to limit them, but I definitely think US clinical experience should be on the top, followed by volunteer work.
Dr. Weissman, any thoughts on the new format?
Yeah, and I agree with all this. I also would like to, have everybody understand the context for this change. I think that a lot of it was because people were listing 15, 20 different things, and program directors were kind of saying a lot of it's extraneous. It's just too hard to review. A lot of it doesn't matter. So they're trying to say, okay, listen, at the end of the day, you should have a maximum of 8 to 10 different things that stand out, that are big about yourself, your hobbies, your clinical interests, your academic activity, and stick to those 10. So I think it's actually a way to just sort of cut out the stuff that doesn't matter. So just stick to the things that are important.
Yeah, thank you. Now let's move on. Before I move on to the interviews, Dr. Toot, how do I use LORs even if they are not from the same specialty that I am applying to? So are these useful to use, or should I just ignore them?
You want to take this one? Applying for it.
You repeat the question?
Yeah. So I have LORs which are not from the specialty that I'm applying to. Should I use them? Should I ignore them? What do you recommend?
So, I mean, I'll just speak from personal experience. Going into radiology, it was nice that I had multiple specialties. I had one from family medicine, internal medicine, vascular surgery, and radiology. And it showed that I was well balanced, that I could work in other groups with different specialties. I know how to communicate with other fields. So for me, it was helpful. And I think if you are going internal medicine too, it's probably a helpful tool because you're going to be working and talking with physicians from all different specialties. So I think it is beneficial.
Yeah. So Pawan, look, for us, I think it depends on what you're applying for. So for example, for him, he's going into diagnostic radiology and he applied for transitional year first, right? Which is the prelim year before. So for transitional year, you're going to be working in all types of environments, surgery, internal medicine. So for him, applying to this multiple letters, different specialties is a good thing. But when he was probably submitting his application to just radiology, I think it would be prudent to apply with radiology letters, right? So like he should show that in multiple areas of radiology and its subspecialties, I did well. So for example, if you're applying to internal medicine and you're submitting a pediatric letter, I don't think it's not bad. It's not going to be held against you, but it's certainly not as good as submitting a letter in internal medicine, in the specialty that you wish to go into, right? So if you're applying for surgery, my advice is try to apply with surgical letters. If you're applying to obstetrics, try to get obstetric letters. And by the way, Pawan, now US clinical experiences are available all over the country. I don't think it would be hard to get letters if you are a professional and you show up and you do the work. You just have to plan. You just have to plan it out.
Yes, thank you. And by the way, to our audience, if you are interested in US clinical experiences, Dr. Weissman and Dr. Toot have very graciously, they've been helping our students. So get in touch with our team if you are interested. Now, before I move on, Dr. Zakir, a lot of questions about transitional year and what path can you take after transitional year? So do you mind spending a bit of a time in explaining to our audience what transitional year is and what are the options after transitional year?
Yeah, so transitional year is the year after medical school before you want to go into another specialty. It's nice because you rotate with all different specialties within medicine. So for instance, I did family medicine, I did ICU, and right now I'm on surgery. Next, I do radiology and then OBGYN and so on and so forth. So you get a really nice scope of all the different fields. And what's great about it too is you could apply to any field afterwards. You're not limited only to FM or to internal medicine after transitional year. You could apply to anything you like.
Yeah, so his class right now, Poam, I think if I'm not mistaken, we have 3 or 4 people going into radiology, 2 going into radiation oncology after this year, 1 in anesthesia,
And PM&R.
1 in physical PM&R, physical therapy, and am I missing anything?
Nope, that's it.
Yeah, the rest are going into internal medicine and family medicine. So it's a large group. So you could pick whichever one you want to, match into. If you're an older graduate, for example, or you are somebody who could not match categorical for IM, this might be a good option because it like resets your year. Now your year of graduation is almost like reset. Now you're applying with this year, and your chance of matching again is much, much higher. If you're applying IM, though, I would encourage you to obviously try to get categorical immediately. That would make life much easier, but it's not a bad backup option. If you're applying for subspecialty that requires a prelim year, transitional year is probably the best thing to do, in my opinion.
Okay. All right, let's now switch gears. And before we get into the actual interview preparation and the mock interviews, again, for those of you who are interested, we have mock interviews and interview preparation, and Dr. Toot and Dr. Weissman do help out our students. They've been doing it for the past 2 years. So Swati on our team, you can get in touch with her to get more information. So let's now jump in. Importance of the interview day. So Dr. Weissman, how important is the interview day?
Yeah. So the interview day is the most important day, possibly in your academic career, because at the time we have to understand that once they're giving you the opportunity for an interview, you should never feel like you're undeserving, like the kids on Zoom or in person are from Penn and Cornell. You're like, what am I doing here? No, when you get the interview, forget your scores, forget your letters, forget your experience, forget everything, forget anything that you may have done well or may have not done well in your academic journey, and focus on the fact that they want to interview me because they're potentially interested in me. And if you can kind of set that mindset from the outset of your interview, you'll be much, much more successful during your actual interview, because at the end of the day, they really want to see you now on a personal level. They're okay with your academics. So now they want to see, who is this student? Who is he? Who is she? Is she going to fit into my program well? That's it. They're not. So you have to get in the mindset, if they want me now, I just have to be myself. And obviously, it does take a lot of preparation, which we'll get to. But ultimately, they're trying to see you on a personal level more than your academic existence.
Thank you. So Dr. Atut, let me take it forward. How should we prepare for the interview day? They're still going to be virtual, more or less. So how should an applicant start preparing for the interview day?
Yeah, I mean, you just went through it. Do you want to comment on it first? Yeah, go ahead.
So before interviews.
By the way, let me preface this by saying he killed his interview. I was just telling him that even before this. Like he did extremely well. So like I would take his advice. Okay, go.
So in general, this is what I did. I went online and looked up medical residency interview questions, and like 100 will come up and I would answer them. I would type out my answers, and I would try to think about them, have like nice, decently long, but not so long that you're spending the whole interview time answering it, but not one sentence and that's it. And then I practiced a lot. I actually used to record myself. I've interviewed with my friends. I asked them to also make sure I'm not saying too much, or how my hands are moving, how I'm looking, like every little detail. And you don't want to go into it not prepared. Like most of the time, all the questions they asked, I already knew what I was going to say because I prepared so much. 2, try to figure out what the question are asking, like what are they trying to get out of it. For instance, I got asked, you're on an island, what are the 2 things you're going to bring with you? So what they're really asking is, what's important to you in life? Are you creative? Like like, how do you think? So it's not really about the object itself. It's how you portray the object and why you pick that object. 3, for the interview day, go on every website for the program, see what the place is about, understand who you're interviewing with, that way you could formulate questions and always have a lot of questions to ask, because there were some interviews where in the beginning, I only prepped like 1 or 2 questions, and the interview was 15 minutes of them just asking, what else, what else, what else, what other questions do you have? And I ran out of questions, and honestly, it didn't look too good. So I have a lot of questions to ask the programs.
Yeah. Yeah, I think too, Pawam, like as an international graduate myself, I always say this. My English wasn't my first language either, so I completely understand this, and I say this with the best of intentions. If English is not your first language, working under pressure or interviewing under pressure versus interviewing when you're talking with your friends is 2 different ball games. When people are under pressure, they may not say the right thing, or in their mind, in their native language, it may sound a specific way, and then they say it in English and it comes out completely wrong, and the interviewer may take it the wrong way or misunderstand your answer. So this is really like the majority of this comes from preparing, doing it again and again and again. The same way when you guys all started presenting patient presentation to your preceptors. The first few hundred times may have been disasters. You're missing the family history, you're missing the sexual history, you're missing the surgical history, you're not presenting in a specific order. But then after doing it again and again and again, now it's like secondhand to you at your stage of training, right? Presenting an HPI or something like that. You have to prepare. You cannot walk into the interview and just wing it. We have people that we absolutely loved on paper and then showed up and said all the wrong things, and immediately they go down to the bottom of the pile or maybe not get ranked. And we had people that looked okay on CV, but then when they showed up, they were phenomenal. And so, they go to the top of the list. So this can absolutely, impact you. So I would highly suggest you prepare and not do just interviews with your friends. Interview with people that don't know you, that will really pick through your CV in a good way, where like you have to answer tough questions.
Thank you. And I know we have just 5 to 6 minutes left, and you both are very busy. So I will now ask the 2 most important questions, which I think for the interview. So Dr. Toot, let me start with you. What are the program directors looking for when they ask, tell me something about yourself?
So for me personally, it's just a conversation starter. It's just to open the conversation. I'm not looking for a very long mono answer. My interviews, and he could tell you, I'm very relaxed. Like, I'm just trying to have like a back and forth conversation with you. I'm more feeling out your personality than anything else. And maybe if I see some things in your CV that needs explanation, I want to have you explain it. Like, he published a very interesting paper that I still remember to this day. And as soon as I saw that when I was looking through ERAS, I was like, I have to talk to him about this. What made him study this particular topic? So that was like the majority of our interview, was us discussing that, right? And he knew it well. He was passionate about it. So I love that, right? So for me, I just want to start the conversation. Sometimes with international graduates that are like that, they're just preparing answers. They go on for like 3 minutes with this monologue, like, my name is so and so, I went to school here, and it just becomes like they eat up a big chunk of the interview rather than get to know them like on a back and forth. It becomes boring, and so keep it short. The answer to that question shouldn't be longer than like a minute, and just and then allow the interviewer to kind of talk and go back and forth.
Before we continue, again, if you guys are interested in interview preparation and you want mock interviews, get in touch with us, and Dr. Atoot and Dr. Weissman will help you out. Dr. Weissman, maybe you can talk about how to discuss research in the interviews.
Yeah, sure. I get this question a lot. So, one of the things that you want to make sure is everything on your CV you're able to talk about, right? There's nothing that looks worse than having, and Dr. Zachary could attest to, Dr. Tu could attest to this, is that somebody who gets up and has a publication on their CV and they say, okay, tell me a little bit about your paper. And you say, it was a long time ago, I forgot. There's nothing that looks worse than that, right? So I would first start off by knowing the research that you did, knowing 3 things. A is what rationale, why did you like that topic? What attracted you to, whether it was heart failure, whether it was IBD, whether it was pancreatitis, whether it was studying asthma, what was intriguing about that particular topic to you? That's A. B, understand what the results of your paper were, what your clinical message was, what you showed, and then maybe what your role was. Because sometimes people don't they forget they work on paper, but they forget what they did. And the interviewer will say, okay, tell me a little about your role with the paper. There was a large team. What did you do? And you say, I was just part of the team. That looks horrible. Or I forgot what I did. Or I don't know, I was just an author, like something like that. So that's not good, right? You want to know exactly what you did, honest and truthfully, but say it with a little bit of the proper jargon. You helped with literature review, you helped with methodology, you helped with manuscript preparation and draft, you helped with critical revisions. Whatever you did, say it, not just I was just part of the team. I've heard such bad generic answers like this, and it just turns the interviewer away like he's putting things on a CV that he doesn't know well himself, right? So I would really focus on knowing for anything research related on your CV is what the results were, what your role in the paper was, and what your rationale for the study was. If you know those three, at least you can protect yourself a little bit and have something valuable to say about them.
I would also just add one, know the topic too, right? Like we have people that like I've interviewed, they've published about sarcoidosis, but then when I ask them like basic questions about sarcoid, they're like not there. And so like, how could you publish advanced research on a topic that you don't understand the basics of, right? So if you have a publication on your CV, know the paper for sure, but have like a basic understanding of the topic itself, so that because that might become the entire interview. Our entire interview was literally that one paper. And so like, and he knew the topic extremely well. Like it was very, very known that he's probably going to be an expert in that field when he finishes. So make sure that you guys understand the topics too, I would add.
Absolutely, and I'll just mention one point. I interviewed a kid who was who had a paper on IBD, which was a little bit of a niche of what I knew a lot about. And I spent more than 50% of the interview talking about the paper, talking about IBD, talking about different people that we knew in common. And he probably didn't know that one small, 1% of his CV became his entire interview. But it can blow up to that, and that's a good thing. It means the interviewer is genuinely interested in that, and you want to show them that you're also know a lot about that topic. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And I know you are very busy, and we'll have another session to discuss more interview questions. But thank you, Dr. Atut, Dr. Weissman. Any closing comments? And guys, we'll take questions later on, but they have to go. So any closing comments from
I'll just mention one more thing that I forgot to mention. Aside from having somebody help you with the interview, you could do a lot of preparation on your own, but ultimately you should have somebody who's an expert who make sure that double check and walk you through it. That's number one. But number two is also have somebody look over your ERAS application before you submit it. Have them just quickly double check your personal statement, quickly double check that everything looks and checks up well, and there's no blanks or something with somebody with a little bit of experience, just to kind of go through that. It would be a great investment for you, whatever it would cost you a little bit, but ultimately it's a dime in the bucket compared to your career and your being an attending and everything. So it pays to spend that extra effort to do that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think,
yes, Doctor.
I think doing mock interviews with people that actively interview or have been in the seats in the past, or residents that are just went through it, is invaluable. You're mocking the real experience so that you prepare for it. Nothing's better than the real thing to prepare for it. So I highly recommend that you guys get some preparatory training, and don't be nervous. This interview season is one of my favorite times of the year. Even when I was a student, you get to meet so many people from all across the world, right? And you just network, you make friends, you see the process. Remember, people like you did it in the past. They're not smarter than you, and you guys all deserve to have a seat and hopefully a position. And we try our best to help you as far as we can. Good luck to everybody. All right, thanks, Paul.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, guys. Best of luck. Hope to see some of you soon. Yeah, bye-bye.